So welcome back to the last part of this year's Inktober sketches, and if you've missed the previous ones, don't worry. At the end of this video, on the end screen, I'll put a link to my Inktober playlist so you can have a look at the earlier ones for this year, and if you want to, you can have a look at previous years as well. Okay, so going from the 21st, our prompt for the 21st was Blast. And what I've tried to do here, just with black and white different sized dots, is a pop art style image. I was specifically thinking of like Roy Lichtenstein and his kind of comic type images. And obviously this would have been easier if I'd had colour. But as I said, I tried to just use different sized dots and lines in places to approximate the different colours. Pretty happy with how that turned out. It's very different to what I normally do. And then day 22, our prompt was button, and I did these particular buttons, which just remind me so much of my granddad when I was young. He had these on his cardigans. These particular ones aren't my granddad's. A friend of mine gave me her late mum's button collection, so they're probably from somebody's granddad's cardigan, even though they're not from mine. And I've got mixed feelings about this one. Didn't turn out as well as I'd hoped. I think they kind of look like misshapen pastries rather than buttons, but anyway. And then moving on to the 23rd, our prompt for the day was Firefly, and as you can see, I've kept it quite literal. And I have this image of these like little cute glowing lights in the darkness. Well, obviously that would have been quite difficult for me to draw. So I was then searching for images of actual fireflies up close, and I have to say they are not particularly attractive. In order to try and sort of show its rear end as glowing, I've kind of done some darker shading around the outside just so that the white of the paper shows through more clearly on that area that would be glowing. And then day 24, this is another very strange one. I had no idea what to draw for Rowdy, and I was searching online and I came across this story of a group of characters called the Rowdy Bunch, and the author is Gary D. Clark Jr. And this particular story, I think it was called something like Adventures Around the Pond, Ralphie Learns to Swim, and I'm guessing the raccoon is Ralphie, partly because of the alliteration of the name, but also because he's got one foot in the pond. I'm not happy with how this sketch turned out. I don't think anybody's going to be coming after me for copyright because it's so scrappy compared to the original image. If I'd been doing this with watercolours, for example, I think it would have been very cute, but trying to get the different shades just with pen I found really hard. I do actually quite like these two at the front though that have got their backs to us. So day 25, our theme was Inferno, and rather than trying to depict flames, I decided to do this portrait of Dante Alighieri. I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce the second name, but he's most commonly just known as Dante. And I copied a portrait that was done by Sandro Botticelli. Not the most flattering of portraits in the first place, and then my version of it probably even less so. But I'm relatively pleased with it. I wasn't happy with how his profile was, which is why I've done this darker background so that his face stands out more, and to kind of mask the actual outline. And you probably already guessed, but the reason that I drew Dante is obviously he was the chap who wrote the Divine Comedy, not a comedy, but it includes his journey through hell, through the Inferno. I've not read it. I don't know much about it other than just a brief kind of summary that I read. Moving on to something a bit more modern. Day 26, our prompt was puzzling, and I did think about doing a Rubik's Cube, and then I remembered that when I was young I had a Rubik's snake, and much less popular than the cube and has not stood the test of time in the same way, but basically when it's unfolded it's just a long snake with dark and light triangles, and then you can kind of twist it to make different patterns or different shapes. And basically this, which is supposed to be a dog, was my favourite one to make with my own Rubik's snake. And then day 27, our prompt word was onion, and again I just kept it very literal this time. I did briefly toy with the idea of drawing Shrek because of that comment in the film about ogres having layers, like onions have layers, but I thought no, I'll just stick with actual onions. But I have shown the layers. And then day 28, our prompt was skeletal, and initially what I wanted to do was I wanted to draw a bare tree like in the winter, and it's like the skeleton of the tree. Or the other idea was a leaf, and you know, when the leaf, it's kind of like just got the veins left and everything else has kind of rotted away basically. But on this particular day I didn't have much time, or I wasn't feeling inclined to do that complicated a sketch, so I decided to do a skeleton key instead. I thought that would be easier. And then we're getting very near the end. Day 29, our prompt word was lesson, and I'm not happy with the proportions of this. I had a photo where there was a little boy kind of closest to the camera, and he had his arm like straight up, and that was what I started drawing, but I realised I'd have to do his body so small to be able to fit his whole arm on. It was very much a vertical image, and there was a girl sort of at a desk kind of further away, and she had her arm up in this kind of shape, so I sort of merged the two children into one, and yeah, and I'm not particularly happy with it. And his hand, I don't know if it shows up on the camera, but when I did the hand I gave him too many fingers. So I actually covered up his hand with the Tipex mouse and then redrew it. And I'm not completely happy with the new hand either, but it's better than the first one, trust me. And then yesterday for day 30, the prompt was vacant. And I decided that I would do this row of houses with a vacant plot in the middle. The photo that I copied this from, this was kind of in the background, so I'd sort of zoomed in and some of the detail wasn't clear, and there were vehicles kind of in front blocking some of the view of the bottom of these houses. So I didn't have the best reference photo to start with, and I do confess I was rushing it a little bit. So yeah, again, I like the idea of this one, but not so happy with how I've actually done it. And when I shared this on Instagram, somebody actually commented that they thought, first of all, that it was vacant houses. And when I looked at it again, I thought, yeah, actually they do look pretty run down and empty as well, don't they? But yeah, the idea was for it to be the vacant space in between. And then finally today, our prompt word was award. So I just did this kind of fairly straightforward trophy, and on the little plaque I've just written Inktober 2025. I don't think I'll be winning any awards for my sketches this year, but I have completed it. So this is my my 4th year of completing Inktober, and I think there were 3 days when I ended up doing the sketch the day after. Actually, which one was it? Oh, I think it was the lesson. So yeah, I did lesson the day after. So yesterday I did both of these, which is partly why they're both a little bit rushed, because I was doing them both on the same day. So I have actually changed my opinion on some of my earlier sketches. For example, on this page, I wasn't particularly happy with my face on Richard Sheridan, and now I look at it, I mean, it's not great, but I'm sort of got used to it, and it's okay. And I think what happens is when I'm comparing the original that I'm copying and my sketch, I see all the flaws, and then time moves on. And if I'm not looking at the original reference and I'm just looking at my sketch, I do kind of see it differently, because I'm not making that comparison. And I think, you know, I've noticed that with myself in the past when I've done something and I think, I mean, these two as well, the Arctic Hare and the Ornate Capital, again, at the time when I did them, I'm like, yeah, they're okay. And I look at them now and I'm actually really happy with both of those. I was pretty happy with the hedgehog and the Raggedy Ann anyway. And I really like Sooty and Sweep. So I hope you've enjoyed following along with my Inktober this year. And I already have an idea for something that I'd like to do a little bit different next year. And I've enjoyed this year just going back to the basics of just having the fine liner, and not like last year where I also tried to write a story, because that was just a little bit too ambitious, I think. But I think if I do it again next year, probably, I mean, I might change my mind between now and then, it's a whole year away. But probably I'm going to stick to the fine liners, but I might also add a little bit of colour. Not complete colour, but just maybe 1 or 2 colours here and there, just to bring out some highlights that are perhaps harder to capture just with black and white. Anyway, so thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. And as I said, there'll be the link on the screen for my Inktober playlist if you'd like to see any previous ones. All right, thanks for watching. See you again soon.